There is a hidden secret woven between the lines of the human mind, a code that, when activated, makes someone think of you, without knowing why. Carl Jung, the master of the psyche and the collective unconscious, discovered that certain words have the power to touch deep archetypes, awakening emotions, memories, and hidden desires. Within this ancient knowledge wrapped in modern psychology, we reveal 3 words capable of collapsing reality between you and him, magnetizing his thoughts toward you all day long. This isn't sorcery, it's the science of the soul. And once you understand it, nothing is ever the same. The male unconscious mind, according to Carl Jung, is a vast territory of symbols, repressed desires, and invisible forces operating beneath the threshold of awareness, yet paradoxically governing most of his behaviors, decisions, and impulses. Unlike the logical reason he believes is in control, man is in fact ruled by ancestral archetypal patterns, repeating like eternal imprints in the depths of the psyche. Jung identified that within every man exists an inner feminine figure, the anima. This image is not built rationally, it arises from dreams, mythology, and unspoken desires. The anima is the bridge between the inner and outer world, and she is the one who silently determines who a man feels magnetically drawn to. He doesn't fall in love with a real woman. He connects with the projection of the anima that she represents to his unconscious, and that is where the true power of influence begins. When a woman embodies even unconsciously aspects of that man's idealized anima, she becomes unforgettable. Her gestures, her voice, her gaze awaken in him memories of something he never lived, but always longed for, an echo of the sacred feminine dwelling in his shadow, in his psyche, in his inner quantum field. The anima is the archetype of emotion, of intuition, of mystery. She is the one who guides the man toward himself, and when he senses that presence in someone even briefly, his rational mind cannot explain it, but his soul responds. This is why a single gesture, a specific word, or even a well-placed absence can echo in him for days, because it's not just you, it's the symbol you represent. The woman who understands this masters the invisible game of attraction. She doesn't speak only to his ears, she speaks directly to his unconscious, and the unconscious does not argue, it only obeys. Thus, the man begins to think of her, without meaning to, remembers details without logic, desires her presence without reason. He has been touched by something beyond the physical, beyond the psychological. He has been touched by the archetype. Carl Jung knew that all transformation begins in the invisible, that every obsessive thought is born from a symbolic root, and that when the right image finds the right mind at the right time, a deep connection is formed. This is why understanding the anima is not just about understanding the other, it is mastering the gateway between psyches, masculine, and the manifest. You don't become someone he wants, you become someone he needs. Words are more than articulated sounds, they are ancient keys that open hidden doors in the labyrinth of the mind. Each syllable carries a vibration, each phrase is a vector of symbolic energy, and when we speak of desire, connection, and emotional memory, language becomes a silent weapon of psychic penetration. According to Jung's vision, the male unconscious doesn't respond to logic, it responds to symbol, and the right words spoken at the right moment with the right energy don't just activate forgotten memories, they awaken inner images he didn't even know existed. That is how language becomes an emotional trigger, not because it explains something, but because it resonates with something. When you speak a phrase that touches the right archetype within him, the hero, the lover, the protector, the explorer, you automatically awaken a dormant part of the masculine soul, and once awakened, it begins to spin like an energetic wheel inside his mind, attracting thoughts, images, sensations, all in your direction. This isn't manipulation, it is an understanding of the symbolic structure that sustains human desire. The psychodynamics of emotional fixation work like an invisible anchor thrown into the deep ocean of the unconscious. A phrase may be as light as a whisper, but if it is charged with emotional and symbolic intensity, it sinks straight into the core of the psyche, and from there, it begins to vibrate like a bell that never stops ringing. This is why some men say they can't stop thinking about her, because what was said or how it was said became etched into the emotional field. The words weren't recorded by the rational mind, but by the etheric body, where time neither erases nor fades. Jung knew that the symbol has autonomy. Once activated, It follows its path like a living force. And so, when a woman understands the hidden power of language and begins to speak, not just with words, but with energy, intention, and mental image, she becomes a programmer of his emotional field. Each word spoken with presence is like a code inserted into his system. And if that code aligns with his unconscious desires, he will have no choice. He will think of her, dream of her, seek her presence like one seeks air. Modern science calls this neural anchoring. Quantum physics calls it collapse of possibility through conscious observation. But ancient wisdom had already said it. The word becomes flesh, and she who masters the word masters the reality of another. The emotional repetition of these linguistic anchors creates a neural pathway in his brain, and the more it is activated, the stronger it becomes, until inevitably you become his background thought. That presence he cannot explain, but feel. That voice that echoes when everything else falls silent. The woman who didn't just speak but marked him. The words that activate subconscious attraction are not chosen by chance. They emerge from the collective unconscious, like primordial codes that carry within them the archetypal vibration capable of opening portals inside the male psyche. Carl Jung understood that desire, fixation, and deep emotional bonds are not born of logic. They are born of symbol. And certain words, when spoken with intention, touch directly those inner images that silently govern men's behavior. The three words are, "I see you." At first glance they seem simple, but on the symbolic plane, they are as powerful as mantra. I represents the center of conscious identity, the power of the observer. You is the vector of directed attention, the focus that flows outward from the self toward the other. See is not just physical sight, it is soul recognition. In the male unconscious, the deepest wound is emotional invisibility, the feeling of being used, judged, but rarely truly seen in his entirety. When a woman says, "I see you," with presence, with non-judgmental eyes, with welcoming energy, she does something no one else has done. She touches the archetypal soul of the wounded masculine. This phrase carries the symbol of the inner goddess, the one who sees the weary warrior, not just as a desirable body, but as a soul deserving of rest, truth, and fusion. In the quantum field, this phrase collapses the wave function of doubt, of dispersion, of disconnection, and anchors the man in the emotional now with you. He feels that something deep inside him has been recognized, and for the unconscious, that is a call back home. "I see you" activates the anima, the living feminine within. The woman becomes not just a vessel of desire, but a mirror of his own deeper self. Jung said that the meeting of two conscious beings is the rarest alchemy in the universe, and this phrase, when spoken with true vibration, begins that transmutation. It is not charm, it is not game, it is frequency, it is symbol, it is ancestral memory, being reactivated. The I invokes the archetype of the center, the U channels vital energy, the C brings light to the shadow, integrating what was once hidden, and it is in that moment that a man, often without understanding why, begins to think of you incessantly, because you were not just another woman, you were the key that opened the forgotten door. You said what no one said, you touched where no one touched, and now, he can no longer ignore it. Your presence became internal, the image merged with the symbol, and fixation is only the visible symptom of what was already sealed in the invisible. The power of "I see you" is not only in the words, it's in the field that wraps around them. For them to penetrate the male unconscious as a code of archetypal resonance, they must be delivered with a specific vibration, a fusion of emotion, intention, and absolute presence. It's not enough to say them mechanically. Your energetic frequency must be in coherence with the image you wish to collapse within him. The ideal moment to use them is when his guard is gently lowered, a deeper exchange of glances, a silence between laughter, a moment where he is not seeking answers but simply feeling. The unconscious is activated in the pause, not in the accent. The tone must be low, almost like a shared secret, a whisper with emotional weight, not theatricality. Look into his eyes, a soft firmness as if you see beyond the person, beyond the body, beyond the mask. In that moment, don't just speak. Deliver the phrase as a mirror of his soul. Let your gaze say, "I recognize you. Not I like you, but I see what is in you that even you try to hide." Your body language must be open, receptive, but grounded. Avoid nervous or scattered gestures. The body is the instrument that holds the vibrational frequency of the phrase. When you are rooted in your energy, your words resonate with far greater power in the subtle field. Use this phrase when he is emotionally available, even if he doesn't realize it. After a vulnerable conversation, a moment of truth, or even in an unexpected instant when he is distracted. Because the unconscious loves to be surprised. I see you. It should fall like a soft anchor, not like a demand or declaration. It is a symbolic offering, not a request. When properly used, this phrase enters like a beam of light into the emotional cave of the masculine, and within it, it ignites a flame. Over time, he will begin to associate you with something inexplicably comforting, mysterious, essential. And whenever he is alone, in doubt, or lost, your image will be his point of return. Because in a world that constantly judges and demands of him, you were the only one who saw him. The greatest mistake when using power words like I see you is to pronounce them disconnected from your own inner vibration. When intention is not aligned with the energy of your body and mind, the quantum field does not respond, and the male unconscious senses the dissonance, even if he can't explain it. One of the most common mistakes is using the phrase as manipulation, trying to force an immediate result that breaks the symbol. The unconscious does not respond to control, it responds to presence. When words are spoken with anxiety, neediness, or expectation, the field closes, and what could have been an emotional anchor becomes just noise. Another mistake is saying the words during moments of tension, demand, or emotional conflict. The phrase loses its symbolic purity when used as an argument or defense. I see you. It must be an offering, not a weapon. When spoken in the middle of a dispute, it carries the wrong frequency, and instead of attracting, it repels. There is also the subtle mistake of trying to convince with words while the body says the opposite. If your body language is closed, if your eyes avoid contact, if your tone of voice wavers or sounds forced, the emotional field fractures. The unconscious senses incoherence and breaks the vibrational connection. Another form of self-sabotage is mechanical repetition. Repeating the phrase without emotion, as if it were an automatic mantra, drains its symbolic power. The living word only works when it carries the freshness of inner truth. If used like a memorized script, it loses its impact. There's also the mistake of using it to compensate for insecurity with words. When you try to fill silences with constant declarations seeking reassurance, the man senses that the energy is reversed. There is no magnetism, only need, and the sacred symbol becomes emotional weight. And finally, the gravest mistake, using the phrase without truly seeing him. When you say I see you, without having made the inner journey necessary to feel the other in their wholeness, with both light and shadow, his unconscious perceives the shallowness, and instead of connection, doubt settles in. The key here is both simple and profound. Don't say the phrase to conquer. Say it because you genuinely see something in him that transcends the ordinary. Say it with soul, with inner stillness, with eyes that reach. Only then does the phrase become a symbolic portal, a mirror of the anima, a constant echo in his unconscious. Everything that contradicts this vibration, urgency, demand, repetition, emotional falseness, destroys the effect. Because words are seeds, but they only bloom in fertile soil, and that soil is your vibrational state. When a man is under the Jung effect, the signs are not obvious. They are subtle, symbolic, almost ethereal but utterly revealing. You won't see immediate declarations or bold gestures. Instead, you'll notice a string of synchronicities that reveal what's unfolding in the deeper layers of his mind. One of the first signs is his frequent presence at unexpected moments. He appears online at the same hours as you, replies quickly to messages he used to ignore, or mentions you casually, as if your image were always floating in the background of his mind. He begins to find ways to be close, even if unspoken. A random comment, a quiet like, a compliment disguised as a joke. It's his unconscious seeking closeness to the source that is activating his psyche. Another clear sign is the gaze. There's a shift in the way he looks at you, longer, denser, as if he were searching for something in you that even he does not understand. This happens because you've come to represent an inner symbol, the living anima. He's no longer just seeing you, He's projecting onto you an essential archetype that has been awakened within. It's also common for him to become more introspective after interacting with you. It's not unusual for him to pull away momentarily, confused, trying to reorganize internally the impact you caused. Don't interpret this as disinterest. It is his unconscious mind processing the reality collapse you initiated. He may begin to speak of dreams, old memories, or existential reflections. This indicates you've touched a deep point in his shadow, and now symbolic content is surfacing. This is the territory of the anima. She awakens the man to himself, and he begins to search for what he once ignored. Another powerful sign is synchronicity. He starts encountering you by chance, hearing your name in random places, remembering you without trying. These are symbols conspiring in the quantum field to keep your image alive in his consciousness. He might try to rationalize this by saying it's coincidence, but he will feel something more, and there is something more. Because when you activate that symbolic field, you don't just leave a mark on his mind, you anchor yourself in the subtle plane. And in that plane, time does not erase. When a man is under the Jung effect, he becomes restless in your presence and in your absence. He seeks, avoids, returns, because you have become both mirror and mystery, and the unconscious, once awakened, will not rest until the symbolic journey is complete. You don't need to ask if he thinks about you. The signs will speak, and when they do, you will know something was touched, and nothing will ever be the same. To strengthen the mental bond with a man without seeming invasive is invisible art, silent alchemy. It's a dance between presence and mystery, giving and strategic absence. The key is to become more than just a woman. You must transform into an inner symbol, a presence that inhabits not only his thoughts, but the space between his thoughts. And this is built gradually, with gestures that speak more to the unconscious than to the conscious mind. The first step is to understand that true bonding feeds on the unsaid. You don't need to be physically present all the time. You need to be vibrationally embedded in his inner landscape. That happens when you cultivate a unique energy, a field he recognizes as home. Use small rituals of subtle presence, a phrase you always say that becomes your energetic signature, something like "guard your world," or "I'm still." Simple phrases, yet loaded with emotional intention. These become imprinted in the unconscious as triggers. Symbolicus, an object left behind by chance, a feather in his favorite color, a bookmark, a specific scent, can become a vibrational anchor. His mind will associate that object with your presence, even if he's unaware of it. This is the secret of the archetypal imprint. You transform into an internal image that's activated by subtle stimuli. It is also powerful to maintain a degree of gentle unpredictability. Don't reveal everything. Leave spaces. Leave silences. The unconscious loves empty spaces. It fills them with desire, with fantasy, with projection. When you disappear briefly with elegance and no drama, you generate internal movement. You force his psyche to seek you inwardly, and in that search the bond strengthens. Another symbolic ritual of power is emotional repetition in key moments. Whenever there's a deep exchange between you two, repeat a specific gesture, a soft touch on his shoulder, a silent gaze, a kiss on the center of his forehead. That repeated gesture, in moments of genuine connection, becomes a neural and energetic anchor. Over time he will feel your presence even when alone, just by recalling that touch or that look. This is symbolic resonance. On the most subtle level, cultivate visualization. At night, before sleeping, enter a meditative state and visualize the connection between you, wrapped in a spiral of golden light. Feel as if he is thinking of you at that very moment. The quantum field responds to emotional intention combined with mental imagery. You will be sending a silent signal, and if there's resonance, he will feel something, even if he doesn't know what. Strengthening the bond is not about constant presence. It is about becoming unforgettable, and the unforgettable does not scream, demand, or invade. It pulses quietly, like a symbol, like an archetype, like a flame that doesn't go out. When a man begins to dream of you repeatedly, vividly, with symbolic intensity, it is no coincidence. It is a direct reflection of the archetypal image you activated within his unconscious. Carl Jung said, that dreams are the symbolic language of the soul, a bridge between unconscious content and waking awareness. And when you become a constant presence in his dreams, it's because your energy has crossed the barrier of the rational mind and entered the realm of symbols. You've ceased to be just a person, you have become an inner significate, a living manifestation of the anima in motion. The unconscious projects through dreams what it seeks to integrate, understand, or resist. If you appear there, it's because he is processing your presence on deep levels. Pay attention to the details. If in his dreams he searches for you, watches you, or tries to communicate, these are clear signs that your image is vibrating at the core of his emotional self. If the dreams are repetitive, intense, or leave lingering feelings upon waking, the symbolic bond is growing stronger. But it doesn't end there. The universe, as a holographic mirror of the mind, begins to conspire through synchronicity. Jung called this meaningful coincidence. External events that seem random, but contain internal content, so specific, they become vibrational confirmations of the connection. He starts hearing songs that remind him of you, seeing your name in improbable places, smelling your perfume on strangers in the street. Suddenly, you run into each other in unexpected places, or he says phrases you were just thinking hours ago. That's not coincidence, that's reality collapsing. When two energy fields are in resonance, the universe folds itself to create visible contact points between them. These signs are the silent language of the invisible bond. And when you perceive them, you understand there is no need to force anything. The connection already exists. The universe simply reflects it. And in that moment, enters the art of maintaining mystery. Because mystery is what keeps the symbol alive. If you give yourself completely, without space, without layers, his unconscious stops searching. You become literal, and the literal does not reach the soul. But maintaining mystery is not about hiding who you are. It's not a game. It's about knowing how to reveal yourself in doses, like someone who leaves traces of a deeper truth waiting to be discovered. It's showing vulnerability with strength, beauty with authenticity, presence with measured absence. The archetype of the symbolic woman, the one who awakens, ignites, transforms, never gives everything. She is a mirror in which he sees himself, but also a challenge to go beyond. When you become that figure, not fabricated but amplified by the awareness of who you are, you become unforgettable. The dreams continue, the synchronicities increase, the mystery remains, and he, without knowing why, stays trapped in the quest to decipher you. Not as just any person, but as a presence that marked his inner world, because there is something in you that speaks to something in him that he cannot name. That is the true symbolic bond, subtle, eternal. Silence, when understood, is one of the most powerful languages of the symbolic universe. In the masculine mind, which operates at rhythms different from the feminine, silence is not empty. It is sharp. It's in the space where nothing is said that everything is felt. Carl Jung knew that the unconscious needs pause to reveal its contents. And when a woman understands the role of silence as an archetypal tool, she stops acting from impulse and starts acting from frequency. Strategic absence is not emotional absence. It's subliminal presence. It's the moment when your energy withdraws from the surface, but continues to vibrate in the back of his mind, like a whisper that won't fade. That's where the symbols solidify. The man, lacking immediate access to your presence, begins to project. He imagines, repeats moments, longs for something he can't name. And that something is you, not the literal you, but the symbolic image you left engraved in his field. Pauses increase desire because they create space for the male unconscious to act. He begins to dream, remember, question, and the more you try to rationalize, the more you infiltrate the subtle paths of the archetype. That is the secret of unforgettable figures. They're not always visible, but they're always present. Their field remains active, even in absence. And here enters the magnetic power of detachment. Detachment is not giving up. It is releasing mental control, anxious expectation, the desire for immediate results. It's trusting what was planted in the invisible field, When you let go, you open the space for him to come by his own will, not pulled by pressure, but drawn by resonance. Detachment creates a field of pure magnetism, because when you don't chase, you become a pole. The masculine unconscious is attracted to what vibrates with energetic sovereignty, not with need. And when he senses that you're not chasing him but you're also not rejecting him, that you are centered, whole, radiant, he begins to be pulled by a force he doesn't understand, but that moves him. It's the mystery returning, the internal image pulsing, the emotional memory you planted, now blooming on its own. Jung said that everything repressed returns with more strength, and the same happens with what retreats with elegance. Your absence becomes potential presence. Your pause becomes a screen on which he projects, and in that space is born the deepest bond, the one that wasn't forced but invoked. That's why, when you feel the urge to act, wait. When you want to speak, stay silent. When anxiety tightens, breathe and release, because it's in that space between sound and gesture where his soul will begin to search for you. And the most mysterious part, he will think it was his own idea, but you will know it was in the silence that he began to hear you the loudest. When language touches the soul, it is no longer just communication, it becomes alchemy. Each word, charged with intention, becomes an invisible thread between consciousnesses, a vibrational field that transcends time, space, and logic. What Carl Jung ultimately discovered, and what ancient traditions have always known, is that true influence doesn't occur in the mind's scream, but in the whisper of the symbol. When you say, "I see you," you are not just speaking, you are activating, awakening parts of the other that were asleep, summoning the inner image he himself doesn't know, lighting a subtle fire that consumes slowly but never extinguishes. You become a living memory, a pulsing archetype, a desire that transcends the body. But with that power comes responsibility, because when you touch someone's unconscious, you don't just influence, you transform. This technique must not be used as empty manipulation, but as a bridge between conscious souls, as a vehicle for real, deep and expansive connection. Words are seeds of reality, and when planted in fertile ground with containment, truth, presence, and detachment, they bloom in ways that not even destiny can predict. You don't need to force anything. The right language at the right moment, with the right heart, creates silent waves that pass through his unconscious, like a melody that never stops playing. And so, you don't just make him think of you, you become part of who he is. Because when language touches the soul, there is no forgetting, only eternity.